I voted for you, but midterms are flying out the door. I voted for you to destroy our hopes and plans to retire. Retirement savings crushed. For God's sakes, why decimate everything at one time? It will take years to recover. Recall the tariffs. It cost me over $3,200 in my retirement accounts Friday. I can't afford this recession that you're throwing the USA into. As I speak, the market is swinging wildly back and forth after basically collapsing for the last couple weeks. People's retirement savings have been hit. Nobody knows what retaliatory tariffs are going to look like or what that's going to do. Nobody knows if Laura Loomer is going to whisper 75% tariffs on China in Trump's ear at dinner. If you listen to the right-wing media machine, you'll be told that this is the fault of woke globalists, that this is just a brief bump on the road to incredible prosperity. This next one's my favorite, though.
When somebody has the courage to show up and say to Wall Street, screw you, I am waging war, I'm waging class warfare on behalf of the American working class, and you elites in Wall Street, you do what you need to do because I'm not going to stop fighting for the American working class.
This is a lie. You are being actively lied to by an administration of economic illiterates and ideologues that want to sacrifice your money and your future to their half-remembered vision of the past. It's actually very important to note that a lot of this isn't driven by any sort of economic theory at all. It is, in their minds, very much just another example of waging the war on woke.
When you sit behind a screen all day, it makes you a woman. Studies have shown this. Studies have shown this. And if you're out working, like building robots like Harold, you are around other guys. You're not around HR ladies and lawyers.
What do you do?
Gives you estrogen.
They think that the insights of the field of economics are woke and Poindexterish and must be discarded. They think that international trade is woke and emasculating to the spirit of the nation and must be rooted out. The subsuming of international trade into the things considered unacceptably woke by the hard right, I think shows that the Trump administration's cultural revolution isn't just about curbing the things that irritate you about progressive politics. It's actually about something much deeper than that. I'm contending that what a lot of the big shots in the Trump administration really mean in practice whenever they say woke or globalist or whatever is in fact much more than what your average person thinks of when they hear those words. And what's being called a war against woke at this stage become a war against the greatest engine of prosperity and global development in human history. They're waging a war on the very concept of the open society that was developed in the aftermath of World War II. Let me explain, and then I'll tell you how we can stop this. As you may know, World War II was catastrophic. The Axis powers, after ginning themselves up into the collective psychosis that we call fascism, attempted to take over the world before being defeated by the Allies. But of course, this was the second time in 40 years that we had done this sort of thing. And so after World War II was won, a lot of people were very interested in figuring out how to avoid number 3. One of these people was a man named Karl Popper. Karl Popper was a philosopher who had to flee Austria because of his Jewish ancestry, even though his family had actually converted to Lutheranism. Popper is well known as a philosopher of science. He probably is most well known for his defense of the idea that scientific claims ought to be falsifiable, meaning scientific claims must be testable, must be able to be proven wrong in order to actually be scientific. If a claim is not falsifiable, according to Popper, it might be pseudoscience. This background might seem kind of irrelevant, but I think it's actually very important to understanding what I'm about to tell you, which is that Popper was also very well known in the field of political philosophy. You've probably actually already interacted with his work, even if you don't know it yet. This comic occasionally makes the rounds on the internet, purporting to describe something called the paradox of tolerance. This comic is actually kind of not clear about the point of the paradox of tolerance. Popper wasn't just talking about forbidding people from saying offensive or hateful things. His definition of intolerance has to do with people who direct their followers to reject argument and actually engage in violence against others. That's what he's considering to be intolerance. But I digress. This has been an influential idea on the internet, and the non-webcomic version of it comes from Popper's book, The Open Society and Its Enemies. In that book, he applies his thoughts about the power of human reason to a vision of what he calls an open society. The open society, according to Popper, allows for individual freedom, democracy, the application of reason rather than magical thinking to the betterment of society, and for equal justice. The open society is rejection of what Popper calls the closed society, a society defined by things like authoritarianism, the minimizing or erasing of individuality in service to a collective. Popper, of course, was a big defender of the open society, but he also recognizes that life as an individual in an open society can be very difficult. It can lead to feelings of discontentment, isolation, of not understanding what your place in the world is. These aren't feelings unique to our age, even if we feel like that sometimes. He called this feeling the strain of civilization. Reactionaries who seek to close the open society often appeal to this feeling of a lack of purpose, to the human desire for social cohesion and to feel secure in your place in the world. In a closed society, you know exactly where your place is. For the vast majority, that place may be under somebody else's boot, but hey, at least you know that's where you belong, wedged between the rubber and the dust. No freedom, but no angst either. For Popper, the strain of civilization might be painful, but it's also worth it because it allows us to enjoy the greater benefits of freedom, individuality, and societies that don't tyrannize us and don't tell us, in the words of Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator, what to do, what to think, and what to feel. It is the strain created by the effort which life in an open and partially abstract society continually demands from us, by the endeavor to be rational, to forego at least some of our emotional social needs, to look after ourselves, and to accept responsibilities. We must, I believe, bear this strain as the price to be paid for every increase in knowledge, in reasonableness, in cooperation, and in mutual help, and consequently, in our chances of survival and in the size of the population. It is the price we have to pay for being human. One of the greatest things that the development of open societies have allowed for is unprecedented opportunity, not just for personal development, but for material prosperity. A cornerstone of the open society is tolerance for collaboration and cooperation with people who are different from you. The open society recognizes that life is not a zero-sum game, that people can actually help each other. It just so happens that this principle has been an incredible generator of material prosperity. Before modern capitalist economies developed, nations operated on something called mercantilism. The theory of mercantilism is fundamentally built on the incorrect assumption that there's a fixed amount of wealth or value in the world, and therefore mercantilist nations preferred to use trade barriers like tariffs on imports to prevent, in their view, wealth from leaving the nation. In the modern world, we more or less recognize that terribly abstract and hard to comprehend principle that two people can achieve more when they work together than either can working alone. You could be an expert engineer, but if you were dropped off in the forest with nothing but your knowledge and your tools, you could not build alone the device that you're watching this video on, not in an entire lifetime. Specialization and cooperation among people, among nations, is what made it possible for you to see this video. Think about every physical piece of your phone. How many people do you think were involved in the design, production, and delivery of just one of the screws? None of this is to say that life is perfect. Life remains horrid for far too many people. But the principle remains true. An open society that recognizes the benefits of cooperation and knows that there isn't a fixed amount of wealth in the world is going to be fundamentally more prosperous than a closed society that doesn't recognize these things. And ultimately, that's why the Trump administration is throwing us headlong into economic calamity, because they reject this idea. They want the closed society more than they care about economic reality. This is plainly obvious when you listen to the way Trump himself talks about other countries. It's always transactional. If we're providing humanitarian aid to a country, that doesn't represent the principle of great power coming with great responsibility, or even of soft power generation. It represents the United States being taken advantage of. Trump talks about trade deficits as if they represent a literal robbery of wealth from the United States. I have a trade deficit with Chili's. I don't consider it a robbery when I purchase a triple dipper, and I certainly won't be forcing myself to pay 40% more than I already do in order to encourage myself to build a Chili's in my living room. I really think it's so important to recognize that the Trump administration's opposition to the open society helps explain their opposition to international trade, but it also explains a great deal of the other positions of the national conservatives riding shotgun in this administration that will also make us much poorer in the pursuit of their idealized vision of a closed society. An open society that includes is going to be more prosperous than a closed society that excludes international trading partners because they're not us, excludes minorities from respect and from dignity, excludes immigrants, excludes women from the public sphere even.
I don't want to see women in the public sphere. You mean they shouldn't hold political office? Correct. You mean you don't want to see them podcasting? Correct.
Elon Musk, too, is clearly an opponent of the open society. You see this when he talks about how empathy is a fundamental weakness of Western civilization.
The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. They're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response.
This idea that we literally shouldn't even empathize with other people, that empathy is a sin, even according to some, is the hallmark of somebody who wants this nation to be a poor, backwards, closed society that never does anything new or interesting ever. You think these guys don't know that any manufacturing that comes back to the United States will be largely automated? There will be no explosion of assembly line jobs. We'll just be poorer. This is the hubris of men who think that they already have all the answers, that feel that they don't have anything new to learn, that feel that their fellow man has nothing useful to offer them except polite supplication. And that's why the market is going off the rails, because the Trump administration, and unfortunately a significant amount of the Republican Party, is gleefully hacking away at the concept of the open society. And the open society is the basis for an incredible amount of the wealth generation that happens in this nation. And so it'll probably get worse. I wouldn't expect many of them to care very much anyway, because, not to belabor the point, they want to sacrifice your well-being in order to turn an open and vibrant society into a closed and sterile one. But there is an alternative. The first step to stopping this is to understand that it's happening. To that end, I'd appreciate it if you shared this video and left a comment if you made it this far so that the video gets shown to more people. But now that I've done my self-promotion, the second step is to actually do something. I have about 3,400 subscribers. If all of you called your congressperson's office and told them that you were mad about the tariffs, about authoritarianism, mad about whatever it is that you're mad about, it would make this community instantly one of the most impactful on YouTube about this. I'll put links on the screen and in the description. I'll also pin a comment. I used to work in a legislative office, and I promise this stuff does have an impact. I also went to a protest the other day because I don't like the Trump administration. I don't like that they're tearing down democratic norms. I don't like that they're threatening our allies. I don't like that they're trying to centralize power in the executive branch. I don't like the tariffs. And I don't like that all of these things represent the closing of American society, an attack on the principles that this nation was founded on and that I believe have made it great and prosperous. When I was there, I saw every kind of person. It made me happy to see not just that people were mad, but that an incredible cross-section of the population was mad about what's happening right now. It was fun, it was peaceful, and I'd really encourage you to go to one in your area. You can find stuff happening in your area with a quick Google search, but I will also include links. I'd like to just close with another quote from Karl Popper. This would be a good time to subscribe if you haven't yet. It is an issue that we must face squarely, hard though it may be for us to do so. If we dream of a return to our childhood, if we are tempted to rely on others and so be happy, if we shrink from the task of carrying our cross, from the cross of humaneness, of reason, of responsibility, if we lose courage and flinch from the strain, then we must try to fortify ourselves with a clear understanding of the simple decision before us. We can return to the beasts, but if we wish to remain human, then there is only one way, the way into the open society. We must go into the unknown, the uncertain, and the insecure, using what reason we may have to plan as well as we can for both security and freedom.